All right, we're back on the shed. All the boards are cut for the shelving. First thing we're going to do, measure out all of the distances where our studs are. And this is the one from the other side. I just write everything on a block so that I have it written down. And then mark the 2x4s, and then I'll drill holes so that we can get this thing mounted up. Now, since I work by myself almost exclusively, trying to hang a board on a wall by yourself and get it straight is almost impossible. So I cut spacers, and you'll set one over here, one over there, put the horizontal on top of it, and then screw it in, and then you can just shift these up as needed. Alright, so now this is screwed in place. Pop that out. That's how the spacers work. That's where it'll work next. Alright, so we now have our shelves. These basically will be the location of the shelves. That is the back support. Those are all anchored into studs. Those aren't going anywhere. So the next thing we have to worry about is how we're going to support the front half of, or the front part of the shelf. Now on this side, it's fairly easy. We're running the shelves all the way up to the window, and we have a stud right here, which clearly marked. I don't know if you can see it, but again, part of the reason for marking these out. So we've got a stud right there. So we can take a board, we can anchor it right here, and then we can screw into that board, that 2x4. So we don't have to try and, well, you can do what's called a toenail, which is where you run a nail through like that, or a screw, any fastener, you can run it through at an angle and it'll hold, and people build houses like that, but I don't like doing it. So I'd rather put a 2x4 flush up right here, and then I can screw in. I'll show you on the other side. So right here, you got a 2x4 on the outside up against the window. This is the front shelf support, and it's anchored in this way through the back with 2 screws so that that's solid. So we'll do the same thing over here. So where it gets tricky, if you look at where the edge of the window is, which is right where these trusses are, and you follow that truss across to the other side, studs over here, and the studs over here. So I can't do the same thing. I can't anchor a 2x4 to this because it won't be structural. The only thing that would be holding it up is this sheathing, and this stuff is not designed to handle that kind of a load. So for this wall, we have to do things a little bit different. And what I did on the other side that I can't show you because there's a bunch of junk piled in front of it, is we run 2x4s here that come out, and they can anchor into the stud, and then we will put up our shelf bar, and then we'll have a 2x4 vertically here to support the load that will basically be floating. It's not anchored into this wall, but it will be anchored into the horizontal support that we're going to put right here, and it's anchored into the horizontal shelf bar. And so that will all tie together, and it'll spread the load right down to the floor. But we cannot put anything, really, we can't anchor into that wall at that point because there's no stud. So I'll show you. It'll make a lot more sense. So I've just learned a really important lesson, and it's not really that I didn't know this before, but anyway, I bought this shed and I made a really big assumption, and my assumption was that it was equal on each side, and I didn't actually measure. I just went off the same measurements that I used last time. And so it looks like this side of the shed is about 3/4 of an inch wider than the other side of the shed. And I kind of got lucky because the way that I'm planning on setting all this up, everything will still work. But that could have been a really expensive mistake. And I've got to learn to stop doing that. Okay, so we've now got these 3 support bars up. And it's not exactly intuitive because you would think, well, why didn't you just put it right here? There's a good reason for that. So this is still loose. This is just floating here for now. This is a shelf bar, the front support. So back, okay. So if we put the shelf bar there, so on this side, the shelf is going to screw in right there. On this side over here, this becomes a support, and then this will come up against the front. It'll screw into the shelf, and it'll screw into the support bar. The support bar is anchored to the stud, so we can, whatever vertical load we have here goes into the stud and straight down, and then it also gets spread out over here. Now I do recognize this isn't the best because you're pushing down and it's cantilevered over. Ideally, these would have gone over under here to provide extra support so that it couldn't twist. However, I already cut the 2x4s and I had everything already done. And then I realized that I was off by 3/4 of an inch. So it is what it is at this point. But that's how these shelves are going to work. That's the end of it. Got that center support in there. Everything's anchored. All I need to do is put shelves across there and we're done.